Hello and welcome to this next session. Um, just to say that we've got a fascinating topic. Is consumer data the new currency of the Marcomms world? And we've got a great panel, international. So in no particular order, Robert Bridge, CMO of Cinch, Yara Ahashi, Head of Digital Marketing for Americas and APAC for Getty Images, Steve Bignell, CEO for Publicis Media Exchange, and Victoria Simpson-Clark, Head of Marketing Activation at Specsavers. And Victoria is joining us because her colleague, Chris Carter, has been unable to make it. And we're very grateful for Victoria joining at short notice. So the Campaign Connect is a global event, and I'm going to start with Yara because Yara, where are you in the world? And more importantly, how does a company like yours think about consumer data?
Hello, yes, I am in Seattle, Washington, US. So it is early in our day, but it is definitely a pleasure to be here. So thank you for the invite. So just to give an intro to what I do in my day-to-day, I lead digital marketing for iStock by Getty Images, which is the global service that we have for customers of all sizes looking for stock photo, stock video, stock illustration. And I think how we think about data in that context is the data is truly what enables us to solve real life problems for our customers. It's what helps us understand and get to know our customers better. I think if you think about what we do as marketers as well, we're here to meet customers' needs, right? We're here to make customers' lives easier, better. We're here to help them save time. We're here to, in our case for iStock, help our customers do their best work. We're here to make them feel more confident. And I think embedded into all of that is the notion of relevancy, is the notion of, well, knowing the customer really well. So we know to offer something that is really meaningful, something that actually really gets the job done. And I think what the world of digital advertising and just the online world enabled us to do is to use more and more and more data to do that, to get to know the customers. And I think data that over the years became more and more and more granular, right? Which I think we all kind of know that story way too well. It's probably all the conversations we're having these days about privacy, about maybe potentially we became very reliant on targeting to do that job, targeting alone to do that job for us, relying basically maybe too heavily on this granular data that is collected at an individual level of you and me to form these online profiles that we use for targeting. And right now, I think the conversation has become in this data world, how do we respect privacy? Because I think as marketers and as champions of the customers, it is our job to respect that privacy and really honor that data. And the conversation is, how do we maintain relevance while respecting the privacy at the same time? And I think for us performance marketers, which is our case at iStock, how do we maintain the levels of performance within this cookieless world? And I think there are many things that go into that discussion. I think for us at iStock, we do go back to messaging. I think whenever we're talking about personalized advertising, we're often thinking the use of personal data to serve ads. But then there is this other side of the conversation to us, which is that if we really know the customer, if we really know what they care about, and if we customize the messaging to something that matters to them, it will feel personal. So that's one area that we've been investing in, which is research. There is a study called Visual GPS, which is publicly available at creativeinsights.gettyImages.com. It basically is a combination of the knowledge of our creative researchers with our search data from Getty Images and iStock, which is a significant amount of data, with survey that was conducted with over 10,000 consumers in 26 countries that comes together in the study that talks about what influences decision making. People are saying wellness matters, realness matters. They're saying things like it's important to celebrate the good things in life. It's important to talk about mental health, kindness, and joy matter. That should all be reflected in our communication. They're saying they expect brands to show real people in communication, real skin, real imperfect teeth, people of all ages, real bodies. We see that in our searches. The fastest growing search term on iStock is unretouched photos. So I think that what I'm saying is, I think even though it feels like things are changing very rapidly, because they are, I think at the same time that what we reflect about is that there is this potentially this opportunity to focus our time and our energy in the fundamentals of marketing, using data in a way that is tried and true, right? Which is thinking about how that goes with your unique selling propositions and brand messaging, well-crafted ads, well-crafted messaging, something people can connect with, and that is real relevance, right? Because saying, hello, you left something in your cart and here's 20% off, that's not real relevance. So it's about giving people something that they can react to, that evokes that emotional response, and that's what we will get you noticed. Not so using consumer data, but perhaps not the creepy kind.
I get it. So very interesting. Now let's go to Robert. Cinch is a new brand. So probably in a sentence, you need to explain what Cinch is about, and then your attitude to consumer data, because as a new business, I guess you're collecting it, and it's, you know, you're serving a very specific market.
Yeah, we're thanks for the invite. Very pleased to be here. We're an online used car marketplace. We're the fastest growing in the UK. Effectively, we want to become the Amazon for used cars. And yeah, we've been live 7 or 8 months now, and we're collecting a lot of first-party data. Certainly, first-party data is key to our longer-term strategy. The use of data in our business is like most e-commerce businesses. You know, there is a data flywheel that is essential to the success of the business. Learning, to Yara's point, what customers are doing, how they're interacting with our site, you know, what cars they're looking for, down to granular detail, and then how we evolve both the UX of the site and also our marketing. The marketing is, as a brand new brand, and for those of you that aren't in the UK, you know, Cinch is a significant marketing spender. Like we have huge sponsorships with big sports teams. We're spending a lot of above the line, but also through the line marketing. Probably our biggest challenge at the moment is as you're going from zero to hero in a very, very short amount of time, is understanding the interaction between the marketing channels and the through the line mix. What's working, what's not working, what can we evolve? So there's that side of the data part for our business, and then there's also the supply side of the business, which is understanding what cars are being sold, what cars should we bring into the site, what makes, models. There's a huge amount of opportunity there from a machine learning AI type side. So there's sort of three, for us, there's sort of three pillars. There's the site experience, the consumer experience, there's the marketing mix, and then there's the building the supply learning as we go. So yeah, data's at the core of what we do. I'm happy also at some point to talk about how we shouldn't get too granular, especially when you're trying to build a brand like ours from almost from scratch.
All right, I'm going to come to Specsavers in a moment, but it's important to hear from Steve, where you've got a view across the market. So is consumer data the new currency of the Marcomms world?
Thanks, Gideon. Shall I start the talk by being controversial by saying the answer is no? And the reason why I'd say the answer is no is because I don't necessarily believe it's the new currency. I think it's a currency that's been around for quite a long time. If we look back to things like direct mail, that was powered by data, 50 years ago, whatever it might be. So I don't necessarily think it's the new currency. I think it's becoming much more prevalent. I think it's becoming much more important. When you hear about Robert and how he's talking about how they're using it within Cinch in multiple elements of the business, I think that's really interesting about how you kind of use that data for multiple purposes. What we see with our clients is lots of our clients are on different parts of their data strategy and their data journey. Some may be very first party rich, others may not be very first party data rich at all. So we have to be able to offer something to work with our clients wherever they sit on that continuum. and that's something that we think that's really important. The other thing that I think is really important is about how we can actually activate in a media landscape against, let's say, client first-party data, because it depends what kind of data the client has and how they can actually interact or activate that data with multiple media owners, and particularly how they actually are able to reach across what may be called walled gardens or different data environments. And one of the things that we think is really important at Publicis Media is identity. And actually, it's not just about first-party data, an email address or a device ID or a cookie. It's about actually understanding what is a real person, but may have multiple instances of email addresses or devices or cookies, and actually how we can bring that together, because we think that's how we can make data activation most impactful for our clients.
Good. Well, that's a perfect segue, I like to think, to Victoria. Now, your job title is Head of Marketing Activation. I don't want to necessarily push you into saying it's all about activation. But what's your take on it from, I guess, how Specsavers feels about consumer data? And that may have changed quite a lot during the pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. So consumer data has never been more important for Specsavers. Obviously, we use consumer data lots during the pandemic to inform our customers about, whether we were open or not, which locations we were open or not, but also in terms of the messaging as well. Like we understood that certain types of customers were perhaps a little bit more apprehensive about coming into store during the pandemic. But from a general perspective, Specsavers is just on a huge journey with data. So for instance, we've only just started using propensity models to target our existing customers in a better way, which is probably kind of old news to a lot of brands, but we're finding that they're really working across the different the life stage of our customer, if you like. So there are certain touch points within the certain points in the customer's life where they'll need glasses or they'll need a hearing aid. So it's what are those signals? How can we build lookalikes from our existing database and use that in acquisition? How can we use data signals online, in terms of what people are clicking on or what they're responding to? How can we use our own post-visit surveys and use that data more efficiently, both to target and with messaging as well? So I'd say that in some areas we're quite advanced, but in others probably not so. It's quite a mixed bag actually at the moment for Specsavers.
And well, that's a very honest answer, but it also very, very interesting, because I think there are a lot of companies probably in your position. And I do know that you have quite a lot of resource in-house as well. So I realize it's when I feel like there's never a good time to ask this question. So I'm going to get it out there. There's been a huge amount of debate. Yara's touched on it already about the role of third-party and first-party data. You've got obviously a big swing towards first-party data, and this I've heard various comments over the last 2 days at Campaign Connect, including someone talking about it being an existential crisis for some companies. Steve, what's your take on the demise of the third-party cookie, and that you talked earlier about the importance of identity, but how do you also sort of integrate that with what's possible and respecting the consumer?
Okay, I think earlier when I touched upon kind of clients' data strategies and where they are on their journey, I think it's really important to work with our clients to understand how they are garnering, let's say, third-party data. I think that I think someone mentioned about being kind of hooked on kind of, let's say, cookies. I think that actually what we now come towards a situation where clients need to be really thinking hard about how they are collecting that data from their customers, why they're collecting it, and in particular what the value exchange might be for collecting that data. Whether that's a loyalty program or some other kind of rewards that are actually shared with the consumer or customer. I think that way you have permission to work with that data on behalf of a client. I think when it's just a cookie that's been dropped on a device, I don't think that's quite the same. I think that's where you may get some of the concerns around let's say, creepy behavior around the internet. I think that as long as a customer feels like they're exchanging the data, there's a value exchange occurring, and they're happy with that value exchange, then I think that's fine. And that's part of the work we do with our clients, is actually to say, where are you with your collection of data? How are you collecting it? What's the value exchange you're putting in place? And then how are we activating that data? And as I say, we talk about identity being really, really important, because that allows you to make sure you've got a broader perspective on whether it's multiple devices, to actually understand how much you're communicating with the customer as well. So I think there's a real balance we have to take here, which is, it's not just we can do it, let's just kind of go hell for leather. It's about a value exchange and an appropriate approach moving forward.
Okay, yeah, it's a good point. Yara, you said earlier, and I got this, I know that there was this sense almost of a slightly broader approach to things, and I wondered whether it's your own use of search. How do you see, I'm talking about paid search, but I mean, how do you see this demise of the third-party cookie and the general different approach to tracking? How, in practical terms, is maybe your media strategy changing?
Yeah. I think how we're seeing it is, I think, very similar to what Steve is mentioning. Is I think we have to be very intentional with the data that we're collecting. We have to really think about what we're going to use it for. Is it really reflective of intent, and is it enough of it, right? I think I can definitely relate to what Victoria was saying as well. I think we've all fallen victim of that trap of just the data hoarding. We can measure anything, let's measure everything. And then it creates a lot of reports no one uses, and potentially decisions being made out of data that is statistically insignificant, data that is just not enough to be fed into modeling. Because if you're thinking algorithms and machine learning, you need enough data so that patterns can be identified. But if it's just not enough of it, you're just making decisions out of noise, out of randomness. So we need to think about that beforehand. I think when he goes into the data strategy that Steve was mentioning, which I love to think about that, I think that all goes into that discussion. I think in practical terms, there are a few things. I think we're talking about less data at an individual level, right? There are some implications to that. In search, for example, you don't see queries that have very small search volume anymore. If you compare how many impressions you're seeing in your campaign level reporting with search query reporting, there's a big gap probably now in your reporting. It means a lot of your spend kind of goes unexplained because Google has removed that visibility for privacy reasons. Other things like we're not for interest targeting. You're not targeting the interest of an individual. You're probably more and more will be targeting clusters of interests, right? It means in our day-to-day, I think we have to understand that it means more data that is modeled or estimated or inferred. If you're looking at reporting in a platform like Facebook ads or Google search or Search Ads 360, and you're looking at, it says 100 sales, it means 100 sales plus inferred sales as well, because there are holes now, there are blind spots in the attribution, right, from click to conversion. So the platforms have to use modeling to fill in the gaps. So it means there are estimations going into place. So for you to know the real value of what you're seeing in your vendor reporting, you have to be running incrementality testing. I think that's very important to think about. So you can really assess how many conversions are actually coming in as a result of exposure to advertising. So how many of them are truly value added to the business or truly incremental, so you can give proper value and proper meaning to vendor reporting these days. So I think it's important to think about that. I think how we think about it, as well as, I think going back to what Victoria was saying, I think it created, with this abundance of data, created data silos as well, right, across many companies. So what marketing cares about is different from the data that product wants to collect, which is different than technology. So we've been doing more and more work to come together as a company and that data strategy. And I think a very recent example is using consumption data and how it's changed over time to understand that customers need more access to video as a product that we offer. So we recently launched a new product that is an all-inclusive subscription. You can have access to all of our content with one plan, which customer, we joined that data that we were collecting from the website with feedback from customers. So consumer data that is qualitative, to know that customers are saying they're not thinking, oh, I want to launch a sales campaign or a video campaign. They just think, I want to be where my customer is, and I just need to launch a campaign. So now they can have access to everything. So I think I think that goes into that as well. It's using data to be more collaborative.
Robert, can I bring you in on because we're moving in an interesting direction potentially, where we can we all want to avoid a sense of creepiness. Tell me a bit about the ways that you can maybe use data without necessarily stalking people. I'm thinking of things like contextual advertising. I know in the past you've worked for media owners, but I'm wondering what you're finding at Cinch and what maybe you can do around that.
Yeah, we've seen actually some really strong performance from contextual advertising. Display for us is a channel that has really surprised us in terms of its performance in assisted sales, and a lot of that is driven by contextual. It's also driven by behavioral as well, and data driven. I think what we're seeing here is, and with where we think is going to go on the cookie front, that perhaps the publishers actually will have the more traditional publishers and those with contextual arenas will actually be potentially more interesting to marketers and brands like ourselves. So I think there's definitely opportunity there. In terms of the you know, we try in everything that we do to think of the consumer first, and therefore when we're delivering the marketing that we're making sure that it is relevant, but we're using data in a way that is the appropriate way, and it's not creepy. And we're also spending significant amounts on more traditional media that historically haven't had data necessarily tied to them. But TV, for example, is an area where we're becoming more data driven. And that's certainly a positive, but equally we see the positive of some of the positive wastage you can get when you're marketing with some of those traditional channels. So for us as a mass, you know, we're selling from people from 17 to 70, those who want to buy a car. We want to reach as many people as we possibly can. We're learning that there are certain cohorts of people and segments of people that are more likely to purchase, and therefore where we're doubling down our media and targeting those, obviously we're doing that, but equally we want to get that broad spectrum. So I don't know whether that's answered your question, but hopefully that's
very interesting. And I was thinking, Victoria, your target market maybe age 7. That's when my daughter got her first pair of glasses, up to forever. I think you need glasses even when you can't drive. So as a serious way of asking the question, I mean, how is your data strategy, I guess on the one hand delivering in terms of kind of customer acquisition, and maybe how you're having to think differently about it as well? Did that make sense to you? I was saying how is your there may be certain aspects of, say, the demise of the third-party cookie where you're using data, but you're using it perhaps in a slightly different way or broader way.
Yeah, so I think there's more focus on first-party data as most of the panel have talked about, and I think that the point about value exchange is really, really important, because for us, I mean, it's less of a battle really to get people to complete forms, etc., because it's a clinical service, so people understand there's a kind of need for us to know certain types of information, but the value exchange point is, it's not just about giving away things. It's almost like saying, right, we're gonna provide a better experience for you, whether that be pre the visit or actually for the visit. So we use first party data a lot to sort of say, to understand more about the customer and put them into the right place on the journey. So, I don't know, based on what they search for, if they're searching for contact lenses, let's put them into a contact lens booking ready for the journey. Or, in terms of the media and what we're spending our money on, we're using our own our own data to sort of match the customers into where we've got availability. So, there's no point a customer searching for, a site test appointment in an area of the country where there's literally no availability. So, how do we sort of downweight spend there and weight it in places where we know we've got lots and lots and lots of appointments, and, we can make that customer experience really, really good. They can get an appointment, they can go to the right place in the journey. We can help them do the paperwork before they get there by doing it online, so that when they get into the journey, we understand more about the customer from the data they've provided and provide them with a better journey.
Good, interesting. And we've talked a lot about the targeting, if I can use that word. What about the creative? And if I can go back to you, Victoria, I mean, it's well known that Specsavers has an in-house creative agency. How much are you sort of doing far more creative executions? There may be times when you don't, but I'm thinking about that as a way to engage using data, but to inform in a different kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, having the in-house agency is a dream, really, because it lets us be very, very, very segmented in terms of our messaging, and it also lets us do a lot of things in flight. So if we know that a campaign's working to a certain set of customers versus not, we can change things very, very quickly in-house. I think the messaging is as important as the targeting. So an area I look after, CRM, and what we've developed recently is almost like we very, very specific messages depending on where we think the customer is in terms of their stage in our journey, but also their mindset. So are they maybe more interested in health versus more interested in value, say. So it's that kind of messaging that we put out there, but then based on what they click on, we then provide them with a different creative. So it's been that sort of iterative. It's not just a broadcast message, it's actually almost like a two-way conversation, really, depending on the data signals that they send back will depend on whether the message we send out changes.
Yeah, very interesting. Now I know your media, you use an external agency so you've got a sort of the creative in-house, and then I guess most of the media being done externally. Steve, for you at Publicis Media Exchange, and you're seeing across the clients again, I know that the creative is important. So tell me what you're doing to sort of optimize creative, what you're seeing demand for, and how the data might be informing that.
We've actually done a lot of work at Publicis and developed a proposition called Dynamic Creative Engine, DCE, which actually allows us to work around slightly different to what Victoria's saying, but with lots of our clients, they may have multiple assets or multiple let's call it segments of an ad, and how we can try to drive creative that would help, particularly in a digital ecosystem, but to actually increase consumption of the ads, to kind of help to optimize against consumption rates or completion rates, which is an area that obviously lots of digital media, digital video, particularly stuff that's outside, let's say, the broadcast VOD environment, suffers with really low completion rates. So we're doing lots of work with our clients and testing how we can develop the ability to optimize the creative, the assets we have to create ads that work to optimize and to maximize completion rates, which is a really interesting area that we're rolling out at the moment.
Very good. We haven't got that much longer to go. There's quite a lot of nervousness, frankly, about the use of data. And maybe rightly so with regulators and so on. But there's no question in my mind that it's a kind of toolbox which is really fantastic for marketers when used appropriately. So I'm going to ask, what gets you excited? Where, if you like, in a respectful Marcomms world, where consumer data is an important currency, not necessarily a new currency, we can debate that. And if I go to you, Yara, there's so much opportunity here. What if there's one thing that you're excited about looking to do in the next year and beyond, in terms of with consumer data to be a better marketer?
Yeah, I think it's thinking that what worked yesterday may not work tomorrow, and we have to figure out and test what will be the next best practice. And I like that that learning and that testing mentality. I think seeing what kinds of results we can get from having really well designed messaging, I think that's really, really exciting. And from what Victoria and Steve were saying, I can give one example that we saw also recently. There is one ad that we ran in Brazil. One of our best performing ads, it was the photo of a dad playing with his daughter, and the dad was all covered in tattoos, like this really strong, muscly guy. He was wearing a ballerina skirt and he was dancing. It was COVID friendly because they were in their living room. It felt very real. It wasn't a posed photo or forced photo. It just was a snapshot of life, really. And they looked happy. They looked in the moment. They looked Brazilian, and I can tell because I'm from Brazil. I think I have a very good sense of what that looks like. And we thought it was a very special photo, and we could actually back it up with numbers. That photo, compared to the other ads that we were running for the same audience, same copy, had a cost per conversion that was 39% lower than the other images. And a much higher conversion rate, which goes into that number too. So I think it's proof that you can still get that lift in performance without having to depend on this very individualized data. If you actually have something people can relate to, you can see it in the numbers. So for us, I think that kind of thing makes me very excited.
Good. Okay. Robert, I'm sure people watching are very interested that you've got lots of money to spend, but I'm sure very judiciously. What's one thing that's getting you excited in this business, which after all is very young, and who knew that the used car market could go through this big revolution just in the last few years? So what's the one thing you get excited about using consumer data for?
So I think you probably sort of touched on it there, actually. The post-pandemic consumer journeys, understanding what they are going to be, and trying to evolve our business, our marketing to that is gets me excited. It gets me a little scared. Like we don't really know, right? And we've spent, we launched in the pandemic, in the lockdown, and our business has been live in that time. We're now seeing that come out of that, and as marketers, we are trying to understand the consumer purchase journey for a brand new sector or category. And we've got huge consumer shifts going on again. So that is super exciting as a marketer to understand that, to work out the solutions to that makes me happy, but it keeps me up at night as well.
Yeah, well, a different marketer at a different brand recently said to me, we're in a postcode by postcode fight, against our competitors. And who knew, at least I didn't, that the car market, the customer journey would start and end at your house.
Yeah.
And you might not need to go anywhere. Victoria, I know we're nearly out of time. And by the way, can I just say you model what I assume is an excellent pair of Specsavers wares. One thing you're excited about then with using consumer data, with new or existing currency of the Marcomms world?
I think it's excitement, but also it's a challenge in terms of how you use consumer data across multiple platforms in this new world, and the challenge being how you measure that. And somebody made the point before, how you attribute that sale to a certain channel. I mean, it's nigh on impossible at the moment in terms of the way that everything's so fragmented now. But that's kind of what excites me, how we knit that together, how we test and learn, not just from the targeting point of view, but from the messaging, what messages work on which channels to which customers across multiple touch point, multiple platforms. It's super exciting.
Good. Well, I'm going to leave the last word to Steve. Over to you.
Thanks, Gideon. I'm disappointed you came to me after Victoria, because she basically said broadly what I was going to say, which is cross-platform, cross medium. If I was going to give you it's a one-word answer, TV. I think that TV is an area. I mean, Rob's already touched upon adding more data or insight into what you're doing on TV, but with it be connected TV, linear addressable, whatever the opportunities to apply data in TV, but then to try to attribute that and kind of measure performance across all those channels, but bring some of those skills and capabilities into TV, I think is super exciting and very, very close around the corner as well. Good.
Well, I know that Steve used to work in the broadcasting world, so he knows a good bit about TV, but to sort of link in with something that Yara and I think all of you have talked about, you know, TV and video is absolutely incredible brand building platform, emotion engaging, and I think one thing I've taken from this is that we definitely are interested in data to help create better advertising and engage people rather than just target and stalk them. So we are out of time. I want to say thank you very much to everyone for joining us. Special thanks to Victoria, who stepped in at the last minute, and to Robert, Steve and Yara. Thank you very much. Campaign Connect continues shortly. So thank you.